All right, I think we're rolling.
Yeah, we're rolling.
This is Chris.
This is AJ.
This is the Bellingham podcast. However, this is not, and we've said this on a couple other episodes, we mean at this time, this is not a normal podcast. We have had a unique week in this world. We're recording this Sunday morning, June 7th, for broadcast. And this has just been a very
difficult 2 weeks for our society and culture. And Chris and I have kind of struggled this week because our show is always focused around positivity and the Pacific Northwest vibe and, you know, talking about gear and talking about mindsets. And honestly, as a creative and as a podcaster, it was hard for us to get into that zone.
Yeah. And while we have fun riffing off each other and having levity to be entertaining with things, the situation of what's going on in the United States and the world, for this matter, is it does not permit levity, and we're pretty serious about this stuff. So as we're recording this Sunday morning, let me paint a picture for those of you who may be listening outside of Bellingham and Whatcom County. Yesterday, Saturday, June 6th, there was a rally. As you know, there have been many rallies, protests, et cetera, around the nation. And there were, depending on what quote-unquote news source you check on, there could have been 3,000, 5,000, 7,000, pick a number. There was just a ton of people, a lot of people at the Maritime Heritage Park overlooking the water in this beautiful Bellingham Bay. But they had some speakers. Bellingham proved itself to be having a peaceful protest. There were a lot of families. There were a lot of people on bicycles. There were a lot of kiddos. A lot of signs from what I saw on the perimeter. I don't do well in the thick of things with a lot of people, but it was sunny during the protest, and then it got this little bit of a rain shower, and it was really curious in Bellingham in mid-June or early June. We should be expecting warm temps, but it was a cool evening, and there was a rainbow after that rainstorm.
Yeah.
It was just a real nice, kind of a little sign of hope in some aspects. But today it is somber, gray, cloudy. As we're recording this outside, we're in the Barclay district, and we're under a gazebo.
And abiding by social distancing.
Act accordingly. So this has been a really difficult week for everyone. We are the Bellingham podcast, and this has been a very difficult week for the city of Bellingham. And how can two guys, two technologists, two motor mouths adequately share the barometer of Bellingham? I don't think we could do it ourselves.
No, and that's the thing that you and I had talked about greatly off the mic, is we want to showcase a voice, and we wanted to showcase a way that would give light to the aspects of racial inequity that has been talked about so widely in the last 13, 14 days
and longer.
I mean, and that's the thing, is that this is a long-standing issue in our country, but for us to do it, it didn't feel right. And so you and I had an opportunity, a good friend and colleague. This gentleman is quintessentially Bellingham in my book.
Yeah.
He came to our city, much like we've said time and time again. You find yourself in Bellingham or in the Pacific Northwest, and the PNW has a way of just taking you as you are. When he came here, immediately he got the goods in our book, because he is a person who is media, who is a content creator.
Yeah, he's a creative.
And getting to know him and getting to work with him, because we get to work with him pretty much on a daily basis.
Yes.
His name is Deran. He was born and raised in Trinidad, then came to the United States for his higher education, became a citizen, and his background that leads to his views that you'll hear today on this episode. They are grounded and rounded in being a creator, an educator, being a person of color, being a father, and being a husband. And when you hear about inequity, he sees it through multiple lenses, as he studied in the United States, but worked in the United Arab Emirates doing film and filmmaking and teaching. And also then experiencing that, but in a different country and culture, doing it later in China, only to come back to the United States, first to the Eastern Seaboard for a little bit, and then making his way to Bellingham to continue doing media and filmmaking and storytelling and teaching. But all the way, being black, he also has a unique experience in all of those situations, feeling what inequity and racism and what that feels like in different cultures and in different countries. But also to bring it back home, even feeling it here in our own city in Bellingham. You know, when I had Deran on the mic, he said something that kind of struck a chord with me, and I feel like that's kind of where Chris and I want this episode to stand with you, if you're listening to this. Deran used the phrase navigating the dynamic, and we hope that this episode helps you navigate maybe your internal dynamic that you're wrestling with or trying to process. Whether that is understanding the inequity or injustice or racism that's going on around you, either here in Bellingham or elsewhere here in the United States or around the world. Or maybe it's just the dynamic that you're trying to navigate of what you can say or what you can do or how you feel like you may be able to help. Deran has some things to say about that towards the end. But on that note, we're going to go ahead and jump off the mic, and hopefully next week, Chris and I can rejoin the mic, and maybe we'll with our levity back and come back with you for a regular episode.
We'll see how things go, because quite honestly, things may not get better for a while, and until they do, we want to be respectful and mindful of things, because what is currently happening in our city, in our county, in our state, in our country, and around the world, it's not like we can check a box. We've done this. Yeah. Now let's move on. This is something that has to continue on, and we want to treat that with the respect that it requires.
Yeah, the respect that it deserves. So with that said, here's Deran. My good friend and neighbor and community member of Bellingham and unofficial contributor of the Bellingham podcast after today, friend of the show, Mr. Deran Browne. How we doing? Morning, neighbor.
Good. Morning, neighbor. All good.
Are we all good? How you doing?
Just trying to stay safe, have a pandemic and basically have social injustice, or, I guess you could call it a race war. If that's not too strong a term. So a lot of introspection and looking around at my family and stuff, because I have two little ones, and they look like me. We're all black, and wondering how to explain that to a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old coming up right now, and what do we need to look at in the future? Do we stay in this country? Is it as real as that? Should we leave? And that's I guess that's giving other people satisfaction of of pursuing their agenda to make this a all-white country. And all of this right now smacks of my wife has done history in school, smacks of Hitler and his protocol to bring about the whole Nazism stuff, and pursuing just the Aryan white better than everybody race. But it's not all that clear to most, because some people are still supporting the status quo and not understanding, hey, there's a lot of things I can do that black people can't. Understanding the privilege and understanding now is the time to help and to definitely change. It's just with the backdrop of a pandemic and people dying for no reason at all who shouldn't die, because of the color of the skin. So it's a lot of thoughts and listening to people talk. But the bottom line is action. I think action is necessary to change this, because as the human race moves forward, besides for there being a lot of Black people, then races are mixing. So how do you explain that to the kids of those relationships? You know, that, you know, your dad's family hates us because mom is Black, or, you know, or stuff like that, and keep the cultures alive. Um, I don't want to see it, and I sort of equate it to the Native Indian people in the sense that their whole lives, their languages, their everything has sort of been taken away, and they're invisible people right now to this government. And they're not looked at as people at the same way we're not looked at as people, even in the constitution of this country. You know, you can be cast aside. You tend to think, oh, it's like, oh, that's never happened to us because we're not from here. This is not. But I mean, you're Black. You go outside and somebody, a police officer, pulls you over, and you're like, okay, well, you know, you could have done something wrong. You could have been speeding or whatever. But any movement by me, as opposed to somebody who is white, is construed as an affront, or I'm going to attack. I was like, I'm just like, I don't want to say like everybody else, but I just, these simple things I want to do is take care of my family, go to work, you know, have some fun, play some football, the real football. You know, that the world calls football.
Proper football.
And you know, live this life. But it comes down to, you know, what people are talking about. It's like healthcare. And being able to take a vacation. That seems like, yeah, I could take a vacation. I could go to the mountains. I could go to a cabin. It's like, not really. You know, we have to work in order to provide. Taking a vacation, for some people, either they don't get it or it's a luxury that they can't afford. Because they're on a certain income. At this stage in life, I would think I could do that, but that's even harder because I have kids in school and all that stuff. My wife works, and I work, and there's never the time, because now you're spending extra money that you're not getting back. You know, it's having that luxury to go and to travel when you're constantly paying bills. The way to build wealth in this country is to own property. You know, from the institutions for housing and for getting loans to do that, and you know, with the whole credit thing, how am I going to buy a house? You know, and what kind of rate I'm going to get? You know, or they may choose a white customer over me because they think their credit is better. We rent now, and they chose a white couple here before, and they trashed the place. So we are paying rent, and it was like, why would you trash the place? You are living there, right? So the rental company had to spend a lot of money to sort of repaint and replace appliances and all that stuff. And thus far, I think we've been good tenants. But because of the color of our skin, we had to pay a little bit more on our deposit. You know what I mean? To pay for what they did. So it comes at us at all facets and every day at all levels, even at different classes. You don't get away from it. if you're well off, you're not going to get away from it. Somebody will take your life just like that. So that argument of being from a different place, and this is not our history. In school, we learned about everybody's history, U.S. and European, world history. Who were the leaders in primary school? We had to know who was the president or prime minister of each country growing up. So all this to say is like, we're not, just because I'm black and I'm from another place is not any different. It happens. Or to reach that ideal of having, that great life that you think you have. Because now, even if you're at a higher level, you look at all of your people, whether they're born and raised in the US or Caribbean or different countries in Africa, like Ghana or South Africa, different things. And you're stuck sort of crabs in a barrel because you're not really set. So you can't help anybody pull up. In our case, we're not really set. And as much as we want to help, if you want to help somebody have a space and say, we'll pay your rent for a few months, get on your feet and do that. Or help your family, because you're not really set. Because if you help them out, that means our bill doesn't get paid, or we can't get groceries. And we tend to think that, our people, black people, or minorities, once you get to a certain place, you're set. It's like, yeah, I have a good job, I have a family, but that doesn't mean that I have extra, right? Or even any sense of white privilege. Even if I say, look, I want to take out a loan to do this, to pay off debt, or to get my mother, my cousin, my brother a car so they can get to work and back and forth. That's a whole different ball game, because you instantly get another rate once you walk into leadership. There's no equity there. There's not equity, and we get paid in what we get paid. I have counterparts in different parts of this country who make twice what I make for what I do. But because of where I am, who I am, and I suspect what I look like, it's sort of that disbelief. It's like, oh, he can't be that educated. He can't know this stuff. So, you sort of wake every day. This is you're constantly being judged. Not by what you know, but by what you look like. All of this violence that's happening, and someone said it well, you understand why there's violence with young people and looting. Even though they are outside entities, they understand why there's violence, because they're not being listened to, have not been listened to for a long time. If they have no voice, it's going to happen. You push anybody too far, they're going to break. And it's not always going to break and just sit there and be quiet. So not like everyone has been saying, not that looting is right. It's never been right. It's not right, because that's your community that you're living in. You still have to go back to that store after you do that stuff. But in the context of what's going on, when does it stop? When can I walk down the street? Like I was telling you the other day, my wife we were talking, and she's like, I can't go for a walk by myself. As much that nice as the neighbors are, I have to go with everybody, my entire family, because me walking around apparently is a threat. I ain't trying to fight nobody.
Darren, you're one of the most gentlest souls I know, bro. Like, there's a reason why we're neighbors, which, full disclosure, everyone, like, literally, when I say morning neighbor, Darren literally is my neighbor, so.
Yes. Right around the corner, up here. So it's it's sad, it's frustrating, it drives you to anger, and all of these things that are happening, um you know and white friends and friends of different nationalities that are white too. It's like, what can we do? I was like, I broke it down, and I don't know if I'm oversimplifying it. Call a spade a spade. Wrong is wrong. You wouldn't kill anybody, then it's wrong. Everybody knows that, right? Whatever religion or whatever space um, that you're in is wrong. You don't kill people. You know, um, I mean, even in the job market, we're not trying to threaten you. We're trying to, just like everybody, just like people, you're trying to support yourself and your family. You want to move up. There are a lot of great Black entrepreneurs who want to make their own. Some people aren't built for stay in a job and not have their own or answer to anybody. But it's not so. So the key, and I'll come back to it, is action. I was watching a news report with Lester Holt last night about the pandemic and the social injustice in race. And one of the interviews with Charlemagne the God, and he was saying reparations are a real thing, and that they should happen, because the gap, the wealth gap, the tech gap in this country, because we deal with a lot of tech, being film, video, a little photography on the side there, because AJ is a video guy.
Nice.
The gap in learning, and I have a couple of Black students that work for me, and the knowledge disparity between the white students that come in and the Black students that come in, especially about media and television and film, is widely apparent. Even we as Black people consume a lot of film and TV and all that stuff, but knowing how to do it is not that understanding. And one of my students, he's of Cambodian heritage, if I'm not mistaken, but same complexion. His hair is straight. So if you're looking at it from a perspective, it's like, okay, well, his hair is straight, but he's dark. So he just confuses everybody. But people of color come in all different sizes and shades and all that stuff. But he's experienced racism here where we live. As a matter of fact, when we were looking for housing before we found his house, we were thinking about, well, maybe we'll do Linden. And when we found this place up the street from you, he's like, no, man, I didn't want to see you move out to Linden. That's not something you want to do. I didn't want that for you and your family, because most of the students that work for me have met my kids and seen them run around, and my wife. So it's sort of like oversimplifying again. You treat people the way you want to be treated. I don't treat anybody with disrespect because of where they come from or the color of their skin. But I don't want to get that point where we have to do that. It's on social media, and a friend of mine posted speech by Haile Selassie to the UN in I think it was 1963. Now the words of the speech, and I think Bob Marley had a song about it, talking about until the color of a man's skin is no more significant than the color of his eyes. And the speech went into that. And it's just like we have to continue to fight as people of color. And it was just an excerpt from the speech. It was a lot longer, and it rang true. Not because you're from another place. This battle is going on all over the world, for any minority in any nation. But right now, here, this present time, it affects Black people adversely. And it's like, what do you do? How do you take those steps? And people who are white, those steps are not, I guess, I don't know how this works, but not patronizing those institutions anymore. Just there's a different way. There's a bunch of different ideas and things that I've said, and the bottom line is action, and how do you do that? Protests are wonderful. I personally haven't taken part in any, because one, of where I live, because I'll be one of a very much minority, and two, I have a family to look after, take care of, be a part of. I grew up without my dad, because of divorce, and he passed early on. And I really, have been married to my wife for a good while now. I want my children to have both their parents, to be able to talk and understand stuff, and to explain to them, and that's part of it too. How do I explain to them, my son being 7, my daughter being 4, and it's all about play, that you're going to become a threat just because the color of your skin. He likes Legos and playing with toy cars and trucks and, running around, and
Being a kid.
I'm the best at everything. Yeah, being a kid, and so is my daughter, and princesses and fairies and all of that good stuff. But it's sort of like, now you're gonna have to tear that world down for them, for that reality check. I mean, it's something that has to be done, but I honestly thought I had a bit more time before now, but it's just figuring out how to have that conversation. And being in this area and being a minority in Bellingham, it's the Black population is really small compared to the general population, and so he doesn't see a lot of kids that look like him. Neither does she. And to a certain extent, they really see color, per se. They just know who's uncle and who's auntie. And purposely, because my family's not around, and because you guys are cool, and I love to spoil your son too, I created that community of uncles and aunties, you and our other friends who they love. And because of this COVID thing, they can't jump on people.
No, it's tough.
Chris was over here, and she was, my daughter was just walking around, because that's Uncle Chris. We got to jump on Uncle Chris. She walked all around the yard, and I was like, yeah. So that community, we went to Apple Orchard or something that's local, and he saw this other Black child, and he's like, and both in unison said, "Hey, you look like me." And my wife and I and the other family turned around and started to smile, because it's so like, and they were instant, play friends and all that stuff. They live a little far away from us, and so it's hard to keep in contact with weekend and stuff. But so it's navigating that dynamic. And one day, he and she are going to find out that you discover it's like, ooh, I'm black. And maybe that's what has to happen. Well, that's what I would like to happen. They figure it out without getting in trouble. Yeah. If somebody white does it, is boys will be boys. If somebody black does it, is like you're going to jail. It's all around. It's the incarceration rate of black people in this country. It's what you can do and what I can do. And with this in this whole COVID age, I have a mask and everything like that. But anything scarier than a black man is a black man with a mask on. So I feel the pain and the stress and even looking long term of where we should be. But everywhere we go, we do a bunch of research on the area and people and how many black people are there. And when we were coming back from China too, we had to think about it because that's when Philando Castile and a lot of black people were getting killed more and that first time. And it's like, do we want to come back? Do we want to have our children grow up in that? But we had been out of the country for a little while, so that was a big deal coming back into that. Even the Freddie Gray issues in Baltimore and Maryland and all of that stuff. So that had a big part to play in coming back, and we're coming to Bellingham. And this is a smaller black population. And when I came to interview, a black student walked up to me. I was talking to one of our colleagues because I was here for like 3 days. It was 80 degrees. It was wonderful.
Yeah, the 180-degree day
hasn't
we had.
repeated itself.
180 degree. Yeah, 180.
On my house.
Perpetually.
So I, looked around, and this black student walked up to us, and he was like, "Don't come here. They treat black people bad." I've had that discussion with different people, but we ended up moving here and met a bunch of great people, and been working here thus far. I've had 1 or 2 run-ins with the Northwest passive-aggressive racism. And he's like, we're like, you know what? I'm going to leave that right there. I'm going to leave you right there. I need to do what I need to do. And here I am. For all those who want to help and do something, I myself was watching it, and you can donate your time to black organizations. Those are there to protect black organizations like NAACP. You could donate money. You could donate time. Not everybody has money. People losing jobs. You could donate time to, write legislature, talk to your governor, black, white, even your governor, your senator, and say this is not right. If you work in government, make those policies not hurt black people. You are there and you are the keeper of your space, and whatever you do, find a way to make it easier for people of color or for black people. Protesting is good. Like I say, it's action. Maybe there needs to be some sort of, we're not so going to support, you're not going to go buy stuff for a day, because that hurts all of these companies and all of these institutions that don't propose, that propose to keep this institutional racism in play, and continue pushing forward. At the end of the day, wrong is wrong. Even if you go to the DMV and it's taken a long process, give people all the information. Even though if you know there's a way that you can, even if you know there's a way that, there's a way you can work around it and it's not illegal. It's like, look, here's all the information. This is what you need to do to have all your ducks in a row to get your driver's license or to change the plate on your car or whatever it is. Because one other thing is, because we're part of that gap in education and tech, people honestly don't know how to do things and a simple process and what could help them get ahead or lift themselves up to be able to do things for themselves. So it's having that information. And for those folks, you don't know what to say and you don't know to people that are Black, that's okay. Do what you know how to do and do it well. That can help benefit them.
Thank you so much for coming up on the show, Deran.
Thank you, brother.
Love you, neighbor.
I love you too.
So once again, our thanks to Deran for joining us on the show, and thank you once again for being so willing to share your story and your perspective. It matters, and we hope that those of you listening will continue to have eyes open and ears open for chances to listen to other stories wherever you are at.
Yeah.
May this continue to gain inertia, and may more sharing of each other, our stories, may more understanding continue to evolve.
And to echo Deran's final thoughts in that last segment, hopefully you can find yourself being called to an action that you feel that supports this cause. I mean, Deran threw out a couple of ideas, and remember that, time also is an asset that can help with this inequity and this equality issues that we have.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.